scalable, secure, and allow for rich user experience.
It's no wonder. It's the choice of leading companies.
For your final project, you will complete a beautiful professional website for your portfolio, complete with interactivity to showcase during your job search.
You'll also be ready to collaborate with other developers as you will have learned to use Git and GitHub for version control.
If you're hoping to operate independently or in a smaller team, not to worry. We've also got you covered when it comes to the basics of user experience.
You'll learn how to research a user's needs, create wireframes using popular industry tools like Figma, and design interactivity.
In the final course, you will prepare for the coding interview. You'll practice your interview skills, refine your resume, and tackle some common coding challenges that typically form part of technical job interviews.
Once you complete the program, you'll get access to the Meta Career Program's job board,
a job search platform that connects you with over 200 employers who have committed to sourcing talent through Meta certificate programs.
Who knows where you will end up? Whatever the future of connection looks like, you'll be part of its creation. Let's get started.
Many of the activities you do every day can be entirely performed online. You can use applications on your phone, computer, tablet, or other devices to access the web and perform tasks such as shopping, reserving hotels, and chatting with friends and work colleagues. With remote working becoming more popular, you can work, engage with your colleagues, and be productive all from the comfort of your home. All of that is possible with a combination of internet infrastructure and technologies and skilled professionals who build the apps that you use. Just to mention that when you come across the term app, it could refer to an app on your phone or to a web app that runs on a website or by some other online method. In this course, starting with Module 1, you will cover an introduction to how the web works, including an exploration of web pages, web servers, and web browsers. You will learn what each is and what their role is in bringing the internet to you. You will also get hands-on practice using core internet technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You will learn how developers bring these technologies together and build functional and interactive websites and web applications. As you progress, you will explore some of the tools used by professional developers, and you will learn the fundamentals of coding using best practices and standards. For example, you will learn how to use the web browser's built-in developer tools and code using industry standard software known as an Integrated Development Environment, or IDE. Professionals use IDEs to write code more efficiently. In Module 2, you will begin your coding journey with an introduction to HTML5 and CSS. You will learn the basics of each of these languages and how they complement each other to lay out and style elements on a web page. This includes text, images, and multimedia elements like video. Additionally, to make sure that your web page is accessible to everyone, you will learn how to code for web accessibility. In Module 3, you will learn how developers use frameworks and libraries. This module will focus on responsive design. You will learn how to implement the Bootstrap library so that web pages can offer a great browsing experience no matter what type of device is used. You will also learn about user interface or UI design and how to work with common UI components and position them using the flexible Bootstrap grid. Next, you'll be introduced to React, a free and open source JavaScript library that developers use to build user interfaces based on UI components. And you will then learn about the difference between static and dynamic content and the benefits of using single-page applications. And speaking of content, in Module 4, you will have an opportunity to put your new skills into practice by editing your very own biographical web page. In summary, this course provides you with an introduction to web development. It is part of a program of courses that leads you towards a career in software development. There are many videos in your course that will gradually guide you toward that goal. Watch, pause, rewind, and re-watch the videos until you are confident in your skills. Then, consolidate your knowledge by consulting the course readings and put your skills into practice during the course exercises. Along the way, you'll encounter several knowledge quizzes where you can self-check your progress. You're not alone in considering a career as a web developer, and the course discussion prompts enable you to connect with your classmates. It's a great way to share knowledge, discuss difficulties, and make new friends. To be successful in the course, you should try to develop a schedule for your learning regime. Ideally, commit yourself to a regular time slot and duration for your study. You have probably encountered many new technical words and terminology in this video. Don't worry if you don't fully understand all these terms right now. Everything will become clearer as you progress through the course. When you eat at a restaurant, there are often many cooks preparing different parts of your meal. Similarly, for the websites and applications you use every day, many roles are involved in delivering these projects to users. If you were to look up a list of high-paying IT jobs, web developer roles would certainly feature prominently, and with good reason. The digital world that we all live in would not be possible without developers creating, architecting, and maintaining the technology that we use every day on our devices. But it can be confusing for aspiring developers to understand some of the terminology associated with web development. Finding the right area for you will depend on a greater understanding of web developers' roles, responsibilities, and technologies. For example, suppose you are a visual person. In that case, you might want to design a stunning website that offers an excellent experience for its end users. Or, if you're more analytical, you might be interested in working with the technologies that power a high-performing e-commerce site. Likewise, if your interest is mobile devices, your passion may lie in creating the next big social media app. While job roles and titles may vary, web developer roles are usually split into front-end, back-end, and full stack. In this video, you will learn about each of these, their differences, and the skills required to gain a job in these areas. A front-end developer is someone that works on all parts of a website or web app that users will interact with. This can be anything from the style, colors, buttons, menus, or user interactions as they click, swipe, and interact with the site. The skills of a front-end developer can vary, but they will always focus on three leading technologies: HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. For example, suppose you are a front-end developer assigned the task of adding a newsletter sign-up option to the homepage of a website. In this case, you would use HTML to build the display elements, such as the input area for the user to type their email address and then the button to click to send it. You can then use CSS to position, color, and style these elements on the page. And finally, you can use JavaScript to process the activity when the user clicks the button. This could be something like checking the email address is valid and then sending that email address to the website for storage under newsletter members. While HTML and CSS skills are essential, the most critical skill is usually JavaScript. It is the powerhouse of front-end technology. This is mainly because of its versatility and the fact that it is paired with powerful libraries and frameworks such as React by Meta. These can be used to build rich user interface-driven enterprise websites and web apps that are fast, secure, and highly scalable. The salary of front-end developers are competitive and can vary based on experience. Generally, front-end developer roles will be available for junior, intermediate, and senior level professionals. As an aspiring developer, this is a great area to get started in. Entry into the job market for a junior position is possible with some fundamental demonstrations of core concepts and skills and an eye-catching sample portfolio. A back-end developer works on the parts of a website or web app that the end users don't see. These activities occur behind the scenes, particularly on the web server, in the database, or in constructing the architecture. Back-end developers are responsible for creating and maintaining functionality when users request information or when the website needs to communicate to another part of the web architecture for processing. For example, performing an account login or completing an online purchase using a credit card. A back-end developer will facilitate the interaction of the website and the content stored in a database. As a result, back-end development requires different languages, skills, and tools. While these can vary, they generally consist of knowledge relating to back-end programming language, database management systems, APIs, and web servers. Salaries are similar to front-end developers and depend on experience. Still, the salary may be higher in some instances, especially for entry and senior level positions. This is because getting started with back-end technologies requires more. setup, configuration, resources, and general IT structural knowledge. This is in contrast to the front end, where you can start learning some elements using only a web browser. The road to backend development is generally long, as you must have a proficient understanding of the needs of front-end technologies. This can include things like the inner workings of the internet, networks, and servers. It's pretty common for aspiring developers to first start with the front end and then move to the back end once they have acquired specialized knowledge. A full-stack developer is someone equally comfortable working with front-end and back-end technologies. Full-stack developers have skills and knowledge in all areas of the web development project cycle. For example, they have relevant expertise in the planning, architecture, design, development, deployment, and maintenance of the website or web app. Full-stack developer positions are generally at a more senior level. It can take some time to gain the knowledge, professional experience, and skills to become a full-stack developer. As a result, roles in this area are in high demand and are some of the best paid jobs in the IT industry.
I think where front-end development's different is you have to work with designers. You've got to work with product managers. It's fundamentally very collaborative. It's got like the right brain, algorithmic thinking and how to make things performant and work. And then it's got the left brain, like how do you make things usable and enjoyable to use? Well, I sort of found my way into front-end engineering, and now it's like I couldn't imagine leaving it. Hello, I'm Benedict Hobart. People call me Benny. I'm a software engineer at Meta. I think a lot of people that get into front-end engineering, they don't really think about front-end engineering as an engineering problem. You're building stuff, you're solving a problem. When what you're doing is building products for people and you're helping people solve their own problems. So there's a lot of collaboration that comes with that, working with designers, working with PMs. You're not some programmer slouched over a desk, typing away all day. It's a highly collaborative environment you're stepping into. I started when I was fairly young with building a fan website for a game called EverQuest. So I first started making websites around that time, but I never really considered it as a career path. I actually left building websites and came back to it later in university. I think where I really actually started treating it like a career was in my second year of university. I had a cool cousin who was a programmer, and he was like, you should do this subject. What hooked me initially was that I was building something I was excited by. I think it's the practicality of solving problems with software that was really appealing. A typical day is I'll start off, be it working from home or getting into the office and reviewing code, helping, giving advice on how things could be built better. I often have meetings with designers and product managers on the things that we want to build. And I support a lot of engineers, solving the problems they have. It's wide and varied. And I think that's the exciting thing about getting into software in general. There's a lot of space to be a different type of engineer. You could get excited about, solving these really hard, technical, challenging problems. But if you're doing it without a purpose, I lose motivation, right? So it's like knowing that there's someone at the end of the day I'm helping helps me focus my energy on the problems that do need to be solved versus the problems that don't. So I've been working on encrypted messaging, which, is seriously important for a number of reasons. You take it very seriously when you're building those sort of products that, allow people to communicate safely and privately. When you're solving a really hard problem, it's easy to think you're not making any progress. And I think everyone talks about imposter syndrome in the industry. So if you're like not making progress and you're putting in these hours, you start to think like, should I even be there? Can I solve this problem? That's like a hard thing to get over. And that's probably like the worst part of the job. Technically, I think you're going to learn a lot of what I do in this course, going through how to write code, how to make it work, how to make it accessible, and to shipping it to people. JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Git. These are all foundational that you'll find across every web development company. When it comes to soft skills, there's a lot of empathy, trying to understand other people's perspectives. So engineers, we care about performance, we care about accessibility, we care about, things being correct. And it usually takes engineers a long time to understand, a designer's perspective or, a product manager's perspective, because you think so algorithmically. You need to solve every problem versus like, that 80% user problem. I work with a fantastic designer who actually jumps in on the diffs, and I can ask him questions in the code, and he can code a bit. And I was talking about empathy. He has an understanding of the work I do, and I've got an understanding of the work he does. At the end of the day, it's good to recognize that you're a software engineer, and your job is to like bring a lot of their vision to life, right? So, likewise, a designer won't get into your code and tell you how you should best architect and structure your code. You need to give advice, and you're there to support. When you find an issue, it's highly collaborative. A good front-end engineer will actually be, dip their toes into backend. Problem solving is consistently hard. Whenever you're learning and pushing yourself, you're going to run into roadblocks. Best advice is go easy on yourself. Go in with the mentality that your goal is to grow, and be it become a software engineer or a better person. Adopting a growth mindset to developing is going to be critical. Find time for yourself. I mean, it's not my place to talk about the psychology of being easy on yourself, but that's just as important as any of the engineering stuff you learn. For me personally, the role grows. Like as you build things and you solve problems, you get perspective into other problems and it's this idea of growing your scope. You start off, as an engineer, you solve like, how do you sort a list and how do you drop a list on a page? How do you make a button work? And by the end of it, you're working on encrypted messaging at Meta. I think we're at a really exciting point in the industry. There are a lot of new exciting technologies. There are a lot of new ways and new products that are going to be built in the next coming years. And finding those opportunities and solving new problems is, deeply satisfying.
Hello and welcome. Did you ever find yourself searching for something online? How long did it take to get a response from your search? You search for something and you get a response back in no time. That's really something, isn't it? But did you ever think about how it all happens? In this video, I will guide you through the basics of how the internet works. Let's start at the beginning. You open your favorite app on your device and you're instantly connected to the world. This is all made possible because two devices connect and communicate via a wired or wireless connection, forming something called a network. You can connect multiple devices to this network, but this becomes very complicated very quickly as each device needs to connect to every other device to communicate effectively. This problem is solved by something called a network switch that connects multiple devices and allows them to communicate with each other. The network switch can connect to other network switches, and now two networks can connect. These network switches then connect to more network switches until you have something called an interconnected network. This interconnected network has another name that you might be familiar with. It's called the internet. When we use websites or video streaming services on the internet, these are provided by computers called servers. Our devices are called clients. This is known as the client-server model. The internet connects the entire world. Have you ever had a video call with someone on another continent? That video data traveled through large undersea cables connecting the world's networks, and these cables can transfer huge volumes of data per second. There are a lot more technical details that go into making the internet possible, but this is the main idea. Hopefully, this gave you the big picture of how the internet works. A server is a computer that runs applications and services, ranging from websites to instant messaging. It's called a server because it provides a service to another computer and its user, also known as the client. It's typically stored in something called a data center with hundreds or thousands of other servers, all running different services connected to the internet. There are many different systems in data centers to ensure that servers have continuous power, continuous internet connection, and are kept cool 24 hours per day. Did you know that there are data centers located all around the world? Many websites use these to allow you to access your content quickly from the data center nearest to you. The data center servers are built based on the server's purpose. For example, if the server is only to be used for storing images, it might have a lot of hard drive space, whereas a server computing complex calculations might need a fast processor and a lot of memory. This is usually referred to as the server hardware, the physical components of a server. Once the server hardware is installed in the data center, a piece of code can now run. The code that runs on the hardware is commonly known as software, One way I like to remember this is to think of hardware as something you can physically touch and is difficult to change, as you need to physically replace components. Software is soft or easy to change, you just replace the code running on the server. The services a server can run can vary, but in this video, you will learn about a type of server software known as a web server. A web server has many functions, which includes website storage and administration, data storage, security, and managing email. Another primary function is to handle something known as a web request. When you open a browser on your device and type the name of the website, it's the job of the web server to send you back to that website's content. This process is known as the request-response cycle, and you will learn more about it later. Web servers are also designed to respond to thousands of requests from clients per second. In this video, you learned about web servers and how they consist of hardware and software. You also learned that one of the primary roles of a web server is to respond to web requests from the client. You may have heard the terms web pages and websites, but what's the difference? A web page is a document that displays images, text, videos, and other content in the web browser. A website is a collection of web pages that link together. You've likely visited many websites this week. In fact, you're watching a video on one right now. Let's explore an example where you visit your favorite encyclopedia website. When you arrive at the homepage, it contains many links to different articles. Clicking on one of those links brings you to a new web page article, and that article links to even more articles on other web pages. If all these web pages have a similar address in the web browser's address bar, it can be safe to assume that they belong to the same website. However, the links on the page do not all have to link to the same website. They can also link to other websites. For example, when you visit your favorite search engine and search for a phrase, the search results are a list of links to other websites. Did you know that as I'm talking to you, thousands of websites are being launched to the internet? Every day, hundreds of thousands of websites are launched. To put things into perspective, the Great Pyramid of Giza has 2.3 million blocks of stone. So think about it. In 1 week, there are as many new web pages as stones in the Great Pyramid. With current internet speeds, it would take 3 million years to download all the web pages on the internet. And all of these billions of varied web pages rely on the same core technologies. Most people interact with websites in some form daily, but few know how a web page actually works. I mean, what's it made up of? And just how does that web page get from the web server to what you see on your screen or device? Well, let's explore that now. In its most basic form, a web page is just a text document. You can open and edit with any text editor, but developers usually use more sophisticated tools for working with web pages. If you want to work with a web page, you need to know about 3 technologies and understand how they interact. They are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML structures the content you see, CSS controls the colors and style, and JavaScript is responsible for the user interaction. As a web developer, you will work with these technologies every day and understand how they work together. I always like to imagine it like this. Think of a shop. HTML is the actual building, the structure. CSS is the interior decoration and landscaping outside, and JavaScript is just like the business, the services offered, and the people coming in and out. Let me give you a brief overview of each of these technologies now. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It works by using something called markup tags. These tags describe the content that is displayed in the browser window. This content can be things like headings, paragraphs, images, and even multimedia elements such as audio and video. The way HTML describes the content is known as markup. CSS is short for cascading style sheets and adds visual enhancements like colors and layout to the web page. This is commonly known as styling. It works by enhancing the HTML elements and telling them how to display. Have you ever noticed a friend change the color or style of their hair? Well, your friend's hair is like the HTML, and the color and style is CSS. The last technology is JavaScript, which is a programming language built into the browser. JavaScript provides web developers with tools for interactivity, data processing, control, and action. Have you ever tried to log into a website only to be told that the information you provided was incorrect? Or browsed your favorite video streaming site and seen content update in real time? Well, that's JavaScript in action. JavaScript is the powerhouse of a web page. It has the ability to manipulate the content that you see on the screen as you interact with it. In fact, without JavaScript, websites would be kind of boring and very limited in terms of what you can do. Okay, you now know about the essential technologies a web page contains, but how exactly does this code get translated to display the content that you see on your screen? When a copy of that web page is sent from the web server to your browser, each line of code is processed in sequential order from first to last. As each line is interpreted, the browser creates the building blocks, which is the visual representation you see on the screen. This creation process is known as page rendering. The response from the web server must be a complete web page in order to fulfill the request to show the page in the browser. You will learn more about page rendering from the additional reading at the end of this lesson. And there you have it. You now have joined the exclusive group of developers who know how a web page works. You learned about the technologies that make up a web page and how they interact with each other. You also learned that the page is rendered by the web browser to display what the end user sees on the screen. In the time since you started watching this video, another few thousand websites launched. Every one of them is another example of modern web developers building and adding to the ever-growing internet. Are you ready to become one of them? You use a web browser every day on your devices, and you probably have one open right now watching this video. But do you really know how they work? In this video, you will learn what a web browser is and how it receives and displays content. Let's get started. A web browser, or browser for short, is a software application that you use to browse the World Wide Web. It works by sending a request to a web server and then receives a response containing the content that is to be displayed on the screen of your device. Once the browser is open on your device, there is the address bar where you input the address of the website that you want to visit. The address is commonly known as the Uniform Resource Locator, or URL for short. The URL contains the protocol, or the HTTP, the domain name, usually the name of the website, and the file path, or the path to the page that is displayed. When you make a request using this URL, the browser and server communicate using a protocol known as the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP. Once the web browser receives the content, it displays it on the screen of your device. This exchange of information is made possible by something known as the request-response cycle. Now, let me demonstrate this using an example many of us are familiar with, searching the web. First, you open a web browser, which is a software application. Next, you type the name of your favorite search engine. The name you type contains something called a domain name. Then, when you press enter, the web browser sends a request across a network and connects to another computer on the internet called a web server. The web server is a special type of computer that allows other computers to make requests for data. The web server responds by sending a web page back to the browser. Once the browser receives all the response information, the search engine web page is made visible. The web page is a coded document that is rendered by the browser and then presented visually to you, the end user. Now that the search engine web page is loaded in the browser, you interact with that page to search for what you want to find. For example, type restaurants near me in the search bar and press the search button. Once again, the browser prepares and sends a request to the same search engine web server. This time, the request contains the added instructions to search for the phrase restaurants near me. The search engine web server processes the request by taking the keyword and using it to find the requested data. This data is stored in something called a database, which is connected to the web server. The web server then picks up that data and sends it back to the browser. When the web browser receives the full response from the web server, it again renders a visible web page with links to some restaurants, a map showing nearby locations, and more related information such as reviews, lists, and even reservations. Success, and all made possible by computers having a conversation. You have now gained an insight into how the request-response cycle works. And this web request cycle is very similar for a number of other activities we do online, be it chatting with friends, watching our favourite movie, or sharing files with our work colleagues. That is just a brief summary of how the internet works. The next time you search for something online, think of all the steps and data that gets exchanged to complete your request. Okay, so by now you know that websites and files are stored on web servers located in data centers. But what if you wanted to create your own website? Do you really need your own data center with specialized hardware and software? Thankfully, the answer is no. And developers can launch websites to the internet using something known as web hosting. Web hosting is a service where you place your website and files on the hosting company's web server. You're essentially renting this space in return for stable and secure storage. And you don't need to be a company to use a web host. Individuals can rent space too. In this video, you will learn about the different types of web hosting services that you can use for your websites and web applications. First, let me share with you some of the different hosting options available. These can include shared hosting, virtual private hosting, dedicated hosting, and cloud hosting. Let's explore each of these hosting types in a little more detail now. The cheapest form of web hosting is known as shared hosting. You pay for a location on a web server containing many web hosting accounts with shared hosting. This means that you also share the server's processing power, memory, and bandwidth with other websites that might slow your performance. This option is best for a small website with a small number of visitors. Many developers also use this as a low-cost sandbox environment to practice deploying or hosting their personal websites. Some companies offer free shared hosting, but with limitations, and often have advertisements embedded in the web pages. Sites with more considerable demands use virtual private servers, or VPS. A VPS is a virtual server with dedicated CPU, memory, and bandwidth resources. It will be running on a hardware server with other VPS instances, but as the resources are fixed per VPS instance, your website is unlikely to be impacted by the performance of other VPS instances. A VPS instance will be more expensive than shared hosting. The next option up is to use dedicated hosting. This will be a hardware server that is dedicated to you only. All hardware CPU, memory, and bandwidth resources are yours to use. Generally, this option is more expensive than a VPS hosting. The last type of web hosting is something you may have heard of. Cloud hosting and the cloud has grown in popularity over the last decade and is often mentioned in various news and services you use. With cloud hosting, your website is run in something called a cloud environment, which spans across multiple physical and virtual servers. If a physical or virtual server fails, your website will run on a different server and stay online. The main advantage of cloud hosting is that you can use as many resources as you need without hardware limitations. However, you pay based on resource use. For example, if you transfer a file from the cloud to a web browser, you'll pay for the bandwidth used for that transfer at a fractional cent cost per megabyte. While this can quickly become more expensive, it allows websites and web applications to scale their cost as popularity grows. This is how many of the major web applications operate. In this video, you learned about web hosting and the different hosting options available to individuals and companies. Soon you will build your very first website. Are you excited to get it hosted so you can share it with the world? For more information on web hosting and services, please see the additional reading at the end of this lesson.